Good morning, good morning. Oh, you guys aren't awake yet, are you? Let's try that again. Good morning. Good morning. Excellent, excellent. Well, welcome to First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh. It is Sunday, November 13th of 2022. I am Kate Walker, and I'm truly honored to serve as the minister of this beloved community. And I particularly extend my welcome to all of you who are watching on YouTube live now or at some point in the future. You are welcome here. You are all welcome here. If you are a long-time member who have dedicated hours and hours of your time and your sweat and your labor and your wisdom and your love, thank you. If you are brand new and you just walked in for the first time today, you are welcome. And I want to affirm your courage for choosing to get up and come on into our service, or perhaps you're brand new there on YouTube. Welcome. We're delighted to have you. We are a community working for justice wherever the heavy weight of oppression has dug into the fabric of life. We are a community of multiple faiths, welcoming people of many different origins, sexualities, and gender expressions. So when I say you are welcome, you are truly, truly welcome. If this is your very first time with us, please, if you're online, check us out at our website. Just Google First Unitarian Church, and down on the main page, you'll find a form for our newsletter. Sign up, get connected to us, and look for the information about visitors and membership. And if you're here in person, please check out our welcome table right in the front foyer of the church through those doors, and you can get connected with us. And if you're curious, for those of you who are live online right now, we do have a dedicated group of people who are socializing on Zoom following service. If you would like a link, just send us an email to firstunitarian@gmail.com. That's all one word, firstunitarianpittsburgh@gmail.com, and you'll get that Zoom link. And for those of us live here, I invite you to please join us for social hour following this service. And we have a wonderful art show downstairs in the Undercraft I really encourage you to check out as well while you are munching. I am, of course, live in the sanctuary, and I want to thank the fabulous group of staff and volunteers who make this possible. And particularly, I like to call up my tech wizards because they make this a multi-platform experience, and they also make it possible so you all can hear me. Isn't that fantastic? So to our tech wizards. So I have a couple of announcements. This is going to be a particularly fun one. You ready? Next week, we invite you to come for our annual pre-Thanksgiving multi-generational service and to bring 1 cup, just 1 cup of beans. Okay? Is that clear? 1 cup of beans. Dried beans. No canned? Do you want canned beans? Dried beans. She did say that, dried beans. She's reminding me. Yes, dried beans. Not cooked, not canned. Dried beans. Any kind of beans, though. Okay? So feel free to get creative. After service today, we're about 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock for about an hour. We'll have an informal conversation over lunch, hopefully if you brought a lunch, but there's also quite a good spread for social hour. A conversation about Unitarian Universalism and how our denomination, how our association of churches has collectively and individually changed over the many years that we have been part of this association. And I'm bringing that up because our General Assembly is going to be here, our annual meeting for our association. We'll be here in Pittsburgh in June. And if you've never been to a General Assembly or a national meeting, it might be a bit of a culture shock if you are feeling disconnected from what is going on the national scale. So join me for informal conversation about some of those changes, how they've impacted you, how they've excited you, and where your concerns are as well. And I am going to try and make that as I realized I was going to try and do that as a Zoom link, multi-platform. and I didn't create the Zoom link. I'm going to talk to my tech wizards, and we'll see if we can't get a Zoom link following the service. We'll send it out via Breeze to you guys, okay? Thank you. So, having dealt with all that and my human failings, you're welcome. I now invite you to arrive in body and spirit, be in this sacred space, in this sacred time that we have set aside for one another, to be together in community, to connect, to find that which is most valuable and meaningful in our lives and feel inspired. Welcome, welcome to you all. We turn now to our chalice lighting. The symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, the flaming chalice. May this light inspire all of us to open our hearts to learning more about, on today's focus, who the veterans are in our community. What are their stories? As Unitarian Universalists, how do veterans and active duty military personnel interact with their chosen faith and their choice to serve their country? Let us open our hearts and our minds to their stories. Welcome, welcome to you all. I invite you to rise as you're able, embody your spirit. With 131, love will guide us.
Love will guide us, peace has dried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world through your love. Love will guide us, peace has dried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
So it turns out I have remarkable staff. And Cicely created a link for this afternoon's conversation. It's in our Thursday newsletter. And I am so grateful to having extraordinary staff, and including Erica Shadowsong.
I like difficult stories. I like tough stories, so I was really looking forward to tell this story. And I'm sitting here thinking, this is a tough story. It's a good one, though. This story comes to us, this bit of wisdom comes to us from the Bhagavad Gita, from ancient Hinduism, Hindu literature. The story is about a warrior named Arjuna. It so happens that Arjuna was the son of the eldest brother who was meant to inherit the kingdom. But the younger brother, Arjuna's uncle, had already acted, and even though he had an inheritance of his own, had taken over by force the older brother's kingdom, what was meant for him. And so they were in battle. Now, Arjuna was a warrior, and he never liked to hurt people, and sometimes he had to kill people, and it was never easy. But sometimes it was because somebody else could not protect themselves, and he was clear on his duty. He was a warrior. That was his dharma. That was his duty. But in this particular battle, as he was fighting, he saw all of the people that were on the other side, and he noticed, he recognized, those are my relatives. That's my family. Those are my friends, my neighbors, my teachers. And he had a moment of deep anguish because he couldn't figure out. He was a good man, and he lived morally, and he lived as best as he could. But in this situation, how was he supposed to carry out his duty? What was the right thing to do? In that moment, the Lord Krishna, who was the highest of all the gods, also a warrior, a father, a husband, a teacher, and many other things, paused time on the battlefield, and everything froze. And he came walking out of the fog of war to Arjuna. Arjuna had been very devoted to him, and they had many conversations before. Krishna loved to talk to Arjuna. He said, "What is wrong? I've noticed you're having trouble fulfilling your duty. You're in anguish." And Arjuna said, "I'm looking over here, and these are my family. These are my friends. What am I supposed to do? What is the right thing to do?" And Krishna didn't answer his question. Instead, he told a little story. He said, once there was a man who was known for speaking the truth all the time. He was most admired because he always spoke the truth, even when it was difficult. One day, someone went running past him, and they went and they hid in the woods as he was walking by. Shortly after that, he saw somebody coming after who he realized was a robber meant to rob that person going into the woods. The robber stopped and said, "Did you see someone come by here?" And the man who spoke the truth all the time said, "Yes, they're over there." Krishna said, "Now, he spoke the truth all the time. Is it not right to speak the truth? But in that situation, would it not have been better for him to lie, to protect that person who was going to be harmed?" Arjuna said, "Well, I see what you mean about that, but I'm still not clear on what I should do." So Krishna told another story. He said, once there was a family who were farmers, and they knew that they were in for a very rough year, and they were not going to get very good crops. So instead of working the field, they decided not to do it at all, in which case they were going to starve. Krishna said, now, they were not fulfilling their duty. Would it not have been better for them to do it anyway, even though they knew that it was not going to end up very well? Arjuna said, okay, I get that, but I still don't feel clear on what to do. I'm supposed to be this. I am a warrior. That is my dharma. That is my duty. But I am also these things, kind and loving and wise and treating all things equally and valuing all of life. How am I supposed to do all those things at once? Krishna said, you're right. It's impossible to be all those things at once in some situations. The only way you can do that is if you remember that right now you are a warrior, but there has never been a time that your soul did not exist, and there will never be a time that your soul doesn't exist. And the same is true for all beings, for all of life, for all that you see. See, we all are oneness, and this being separated is an illusion. One day we will all be together in the great oneness of God. You have no control over the outcome of the situation. You must release yourself from trying to control what you cannot control. In that way, you will be able to be all of those things. Live the best that you can all at once. And so that's what Krishna said. Do you want to know what happened? How many of you think Arjuna fought? Okay. How many of you think he didn't fight? Okay. Spoiler alert. He fought. But his dialogue with Krishna, I think, was very, very wise about the reality of life, about the reality of the choices that we face, of not being attached to the outcomes that we cannot control. I invite you at this point to sing with us our song, We Give Thanks, as our children and youth go to our RE classes. Thank you.
We give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. This precious day.
If you are looking for something to do this holiday season to give back to others, you will notice that on our two evergreen trees, we have a number of cards filled with a child's description and age. We're collecting presents for children served by Matilda Tice. Further instructions on what to do with those presents will be explained down the road. Our offering, we share at First Unitarian Church 50% of our offering and share the plate with an organization that shares our values. This month, that organization is the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. I encourage you to give generously. Anything in the plate will be divided 50-50 unless otherwise noted. Donations by check may be mailed to the church office. Electronic donations may be made online on the church website or by texting GIVE to 412-435-1050 and following the instructions.
Looking back now, who the hell knows where the soul of a dead soldier goes? Guardian angels, maybe they're true. Me and my guardian angel, maybe it's you. I shouldn't be here, you shouldn't be gone. But it's not up to me who dies and who carries on. I sit in my room, I close my eyes. Me and my guardian angel are still on the rise. I got holes in my eardrums, bruises and clots, double vision, and my stomach's in knots. I got pain in my fingers, I hurt from my head to my toes, and I wake up feeling like I'm 90 years old. I shouldn't be here, you shouldn't be gone. But it's not up to me who dies and who carries on. I sit in my room and I close my eyes. Me and my guardian angel were still You were family to me right up to the end, and you're still with me now. I feel you, I know you're pushing me forward, and you'll never let go. I shouldn't be here, and you shouldn't be gone, but it's not up to me who dies and who carries on. I sit in my room, I close my eyes. Me and my guardian angel, we're still on the ride.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Danny. Oh, my beloved, we continue in this journey with our many joys and our sorrows in our hearts, those pains and lamentations and losses and grief, as well as those weddings and birthdays and election results. And our journey, I invite you to remember that none of us walk on our journey alone. None of us journey through this life without companionship if we just remember to look to our side and see those who accompany us. We are a phone call, we are a text, we are a glance and a smile away from connecting with one another. Today, I invite you to give your prayers and love of support to Jane Williams for her daughter who is facing surgery tomorrow. This is a challenging time for her family. And I also offer today, I would like to, if any of our veterans from our services, whether it be Navy or the Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, Army, there's also the airspace. I don't know if anybody from the Space Force as well, Space Force isn't here today, and the Coast Guard. If any of you are here, would you mind standing so we can give you our gratitude? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. I offer this prayer specifically for you, written by Ren Bellavance Grace. Today, we have set aside time to publicly say thank you to our siblings who have served in the Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, Navy, Marines, and Space Force. To say thank you to all who served, whatever their role, whatever their service took them. We say thank you to those whose service was brief and to those who made a career of their service. We say thank you to those who remember their service with fondness and to those whose time and service still haunts them. We say thank you to those who return to us largely intact, who found jobs, started families, and who continue to find ways to serve their communities. We say thank you. Thank you to veterans who returned with brokenness so deep they continue to struggle to find a role or even a home in our communities. God of many names, source of love, in the face of all this, sometimes the only prayer we have is thank you. We pray it will be enough. I invite you to join me in a few moments of personal prayer or silence or meditation. Into this space, I invite your breath to breathe deeply and freely, to hold that breath just for a moment and let it go. Find yourself reconnected to your body and your heart, the blood circulating through. Find yourself reconnecting to all the feelings swirling amongst your cells and your mind. May the spirit of love fill your heart with its healing power. May the spirit of the God of many names throughout the ages guide you when your heart is lost and broken. May the spirit of wisdom guide your mind when you feel frustrated and confused about what is next in your life. May the spirit of courage guide your words and deeds in this day-to-day living as we seek to create the beloved community, as we seek to create justice and equity and inclusion for all in this diverse and beautiful world. May our eyes be open to this beauty and the joy that is so possible. Let our hearts unfold in each moment into the divine living that we have been given. And with our breath, let us say thank you and amen.
Join in singing "My Faith Has Found a Resting Place." The words to the refrain are in your order of service. I will lead the verses, and please just jump in on the verse, or excuse me, on the chorus.
My faith has found a resting place, not in device nor creed. I trust the ever-living one, the flower, the fruit, the seed. I need no other argument. I need no other plea. It is enough that love will be the road, the door, the key. Enough for me that I will walk a pilgrim in love's fold, and in the blessed arms of grace I'll rest my weary soul. I need no other argument. I need no other plea. It is enough that love will be the road, the door, the key. Oh, there's a hope that all our souls imprisoned will be free, and that in time all hate and fear will drown in love's great sea. I need no other argument. I need no other
The reading this morning is by Dr. Rebecca Savage, formerly known as Dr. Rebecca Montgomery, called Action from the book Bless All Who Serve. Military service is a lesson in humility. In our often self-centered culture, the military puts other things over the needs and wants of any single person. The mission comes first. What is good for the organization comes first. Our historical footprint comes first. Operational security comes first. As service members, we are each just one cell in a huge organization that is living and breathing. It's easy to get lost as a faceless soldier, just another Joe on a mission. As people of faith, we choose a spiritual path that calls us to be greater than just another Joe. We bring compassion to those who are suffering. We offer acceptance to those who have been cast aside. We befriend those we meet without checking out their political differences, political affiliation, or religious beliefs first. We give voice to those who are overlooked and oppressed. We open our hearts and minds to spiritual wisdom from the world's religious traditions. Spiritual humility means putting ourselves aside and watching for opportunities to bring healing to a bruised and broken world. We bring healing to those around us by being the best at the role we are called to play, be it cook, clerk, medic, or infantryman. Whatever you do, radiate your faith in your daily work and life. The smallest act of kindness, of tolerance and respect can make waves in the life of another person. You bring peace into the world through your relationships and how you treat others.
Before I launch into this, I have a curiosity. How many of you in this beloved community helped work on the election, getting the vote out, or you served at election sites in some capacity? How many of you sent postcards and letters and made phone calls? And yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Seriously, because Pennsylvania was one of the leading states for getting the vote out. We set the standard. And I think that happened in part because of extraordinary hard work of people such as you. So thank you. What a gift to our democracy. Wow. When I used to serve up at the Meadville Unitarian Universalist Church, right up 79, after the war with Iraq started, and then Afghanistan, and a vigil began on Saturday mornings on the town, equivalent to a commons. They call it the Diamond there, but it's a center park it's actually right in front of the church there. And it was from just 1 hour on Saturday mornings. It was a vigil of silent dedication and bearing witness, and it was sponsored by the Women in Black. It's a national organization that began in Israel. And a group of women, including some of my church members, felt a need to bear witness to peace. And so 1 hour every Saturday, they just stood there in vigil with signs in this center part of town. And I joined them many, many times throughout the years, sometimes in the heat of August, and sometimes, and if you know Meadville at all, it's in the snow belt. In January and February as well, we stood there. I have a picture of myself. You don't even know it's me, but I'm just covered in snow and bulky clothing. But we stood there. We stood there. But one of the people I stood with was a veteran, and he was with Veterans for Peace. He was not anti-military, he was anti-war. And right now he was anti-war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Through the years, months we stood there, I really learned to like and to trust him, and I invited him to come speak on Veterans Sunday about his work with the Veterans for Peace, not knowing if my community would enjoy his message, but they did. They loved what he had to say. And my heart began to shift a little bit because of this relationship. Previously, my only experience had been how veterans had been welcomed and not welcomed back from Vietnam. I was so ignorant about the military that early on in my ministry, in Veterans Weekend, I asked the different sections of the military to stand to be honored, and I completely forgot about the Coast Guard. I never forgot it again, and that would prove to be crucial later in my career. Hold on that note. My other personal experience had been with my oldest brother, John. John joined the Navy barely out of high school, and it was at a time right after Vietnam. And in that time, the Navy was torn apart by low morale and systemic drug issues. It was a dreadful time to be in the Navy. It was a dreadful time for the Navy. My brother did survive making it out with an honorable discharge after 4 years, but he certainly was not a whole human being with what he experienced. My standing vigil next to the veterans was the beginning of a changing heart and experience about an education about the military, but more importantly, it was about learning how Unitarian Universalists and the U.S. military have intersected in the past and where we are today. I'm not the only one that needs some educating about Unitarian Universalism and the military. Many Unitarian Universalists have struggled with military, particularly because of Vietnam. Many Unitarian Universalists took politicians to task, understandably. And in fact, the Unitarian Universalist Association, my pulpit is moving to the left. That's notable, my left. That's okay. But we published the Pentagon Papers. I mean, that was just truly a celebratory time in our publishing history. Many Unitarian Universalists harbored hostility toward the military and by default, the members. Some of our returning veterans from Vietnam were shunned, actively shunned at Unitarian Universalist congregations at a time when they needed their faith and their community. Now, you add an environmental and peace activist, such as myself, working hard to dismantle the military-industrial complex and its use by our intelligence services for political interference in foreign countries. And along with the significant use of and waste of national resources, you can understand there's some tension going on within our congregations. We also have to name the significant cultural differences between Unitarian Universalists and the military. Particularly, the most obvious is respect for authority and following rules. Do you want me to hold up a mirror? I know. It's two huge cultural classes. The sight of a military uniform could send shockwaves through a Unitarian Universalist sanctuary. And at best, they might get a cold cup of coffee at social hour. Several things have shifted our perspective. The passage of time, of course, 9/11. 9/11 was huge, and the increasing presence of veterans in our congregations, particularly since the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan. Senior Unitarian Universalist staff member Reverend Sarah Lambert said, "People began to understand that you could be for or against a war without being against the people who serve the country." In addition, at the time he was not former, but in 2008, the then Unitarian Universalist President Bill Sinkford intentionally helped extend a welcome to military. Most visibly, though, he did that during General Assembly in 2008 when we were at Fort Lauderdale. And he gave a shout out to the military chaplains who were in that space. That began to shift people's lenses within our association. And Bill Sinkford also established the Committee on Military Ministry, creating a clear path for military chaplain endorsement. And that proved crucial to increasing the number of Unitarian Universalist military chaplains. And one of those pushing into ministry was my dear friend and colleague, Reverend Cynthia Kane. And she's now a Navy captain. Cynthia received her military commission a month following 9/11. And she told me, the last time I had lunch with her, she said, when the dean announced at our Harvard Divinity School graduation back in 1996 that she was going into the military with her master's in divinity, one of her new UU colleagues commented, "What a waste of a Harvard degree." The military at that time wasn't considered a viable ministry. But she shared that later in her career that she would preach at congregations around the country. Generally, they would invite her on Memorial Day, the 4th of July, or Veterans Day. And oftentimes, she was the first person the congregation had ever seen in uniform on a Sunday morning, which she intentionally did. I think that took courage. She said all of that changed when she was stationed in the DC metropolitan area, and she was invited to preach at the Mount Vernon Unitarian Church in Alexandria, which is my former congregation. At Mount Vernon, she met active duty and retired service members, and she was welcomed with open arms and a very comfortable mix-up of Unitarian Universalists and military culture. She shared that her experience at Mount Vernon is that congregation is a bit unique with its comfort level with the military. And that's in part because of its location. It's very close to DC, of course, the Pentagon and Fort Belvoir, which is just south of the church. But most importantly, at some point they reached a tipping point in the number of service members in the congregation, and that began to shift the culture. When I arrived at Mount Vernon in 2008, I was welcomed in part by a member of the search committee named Vince Patton, an extraordinary human being, an African American, and he was Master Chief Petty Officer enlisted at the U.S. Coast Guard. I have never forgotten again that the Coast Guard is part of the military branches. He was such a gift to that community and to my life. Now, some of my members were active duty, most were retired. I worked with Navy captain, commanders, and admiral, Army generals and colonels, Air Force pilots and sergeants. I also worked with several military musicians who played at the White House. Now, I knew I had arrived in the DC community when I had to arrange my meeting schedule around President Obama's monthly party schedule because so many of my members were working at the White House for their parties. I was like, this is an interesting part of my life. I never got an invitation, though. Kept waiting. My first ministerial intern was Karen Rasmussen. She was retired Navy commander, and she, quite frankly, spoiled me for all future interns because she said point blank, "You're my commanding officer and my job is to make you happy." That's my standard now. Karen helped provide the charge for my installation in May. She couldn't be here in person due to health reasons, but her words were carried here by Alice King. Mount Vernon loved Karen, as they did another mentee of mine, Reverend Dr. Rebecca Savage, who you heard her beautiful reading from Stephanie. She served in the Chaplain Army National Guard, and she offered the sermon for my installation. Y'all remember her? It was a wonderful, wonderful sermon, and she won't mind me pointing out, not only was it a brilliant sermon, but I hope you caught her muscled, tattooed calves held up by red stiletto pumps. She is a badass. She really is, and she won't mind me telling you that. We have worked out together. Well, I should say I have tried to work out with her. And to my delight, Reverend Rebecca served as my sabbatical minister at Mount Vernon as well. Rebecca earned her Bronze Star after 18 months of serving in Afghanistan, and she was named Chaplain of the Year by the Military Chaplains Association back in 2009. But I can't take any credit for that because my mentorship started in 2010. I also want to highlight to you somebody that you all know, Reverend David Pyle, who has come to help this congregation. He is a U.S. Army chaplain and works for the Unitarian Universalist Association. He's a brilliant organizational strategist. I've learned from all of these extraordinary Unitarian Universalists, who also happen to be U.S. veterans or active duty military. They are amazing human beings with a deep commitment to our Unitarian Universalism, and we are a better faith because of them. And I want to pause for a moment here as I talk about their leadership skills. For you, my beloved community members who are currently serving as leaders here in this community or thinking about it in the future, I am not comparing civil people, that's not the right way to put that. We're all civil. Non-military leaders to military leaders. They are different forms of leadership. There are always tensions because of that culture tensions I had told you about. Because of the military training, service members are a particular way of setting agendas and running meetings with considerable focus, though I will say it's not always 100%. They were just as susceptible to squirrels as all of us. But from the moment I entered Mount Vernon, they saw me as their CEO, and they wanted their marching orders. They wanted me to tell them what I wanted from them, how high to build it, and what was their budget. I was wondering who these people were, because I didn't think they were Unitarian Universalists. This is not the kind of people I was raised with the anti-authoritarian style. It was a culture shock for me, and I never saw myself as a CEO type. Their work ethic and discipline was so impressive and frankly daunting for me at times to keep up with them. When a military member took over a committee, particularly the Board of Trustees, I knew I was going to have to work overtime to keep up with them. Non-military church members also knew the expectations might be high, and they also knew that their patience from the military leaders might be also short. It's not radical to note that church work is not usually expedient and efficient. It's more likely slow and cumbersome as a more accurate description for how most churches and all denominations work. And this sometimes caused a culture shock, if not outright conflict, with some of the expectations of our military members. Fortunately, all parties learned to adapt, particularly as I learned about the military culture, and I invited them to know more about UU culture. And I taught them about collaboration and how getting everybody on board was more important than getting the job done. I want to offer you the words of George Tiger. He's an Army chaplain and Unitarian Universalist minister, and he exemplifies, I think, the kind of leadership that we could all aspire to. He writes, "The meaning of whatever job or mission you are currently engaged in is determined by how you choose to do it, how you conduct yourself. This is the calling we make for ourselves day in and day out as we live our lives, as if the calling we have to be the fully human beings we are created to be. End quote. For most of all, I was impressed by the commitment to Unitarian Universalism by UU military and service members and the veterans. They do not see any conflict at all between their liberal religious faith and their commitment to our country. They, perhaps more than anyone, see more clearly that many Unitarian Universalists and clergy may see the potential of our faith to be used in the public voice and the pursuit of justice. I told you, when I candidated in one of my sermons, I told you about retired Navy Captain Joan Dara. She was just an extraordinary leader, and when she retired from the Navy, she helped lead a national campaign to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell after 29 years of being closeted in the Navy. And at that time, in Fort Lauderdale in General Assembly in 2008, Bill Sinkford, when he gave out a shout out to the UU military chaplains, Mount Vernon actually received an award for their social justice program, in large part because of the leadership of Joan Dara, who at that moment was running around General Assembly gathering signatures for the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell as an action of immediate witness. Unitarian Universalist service members, they do have a specialized training, learning high level of discipline that I could never subject myself to, and they apply it to extraordinary capacity that continues to inspire me. So I offer you one more personal story of someone who changed that just is, I find extraordinary, deep gratitude, and that is the life and the teaching of Admiral Noel Geiler. And he lived our sixth principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. When I went to visit Noel Geiler, he was in a nursing home, and I was struck by his composure despite his alien body and the cramped quarters he was sharing in one room with 2 other veterans. When he was done chatting with me, I was politely dismissed. And being no fool, I took my cue as I left, but I couldn't help but notice about the poor funding for our veterans in his substandard care. It broke my heart. When I had the honor of speaking at Admiral Geiler's internment at Arlington National Cemetery, I couldn't help but note the expense that the Navy went to give him full honors, full military band, a caisson, honor guard, and a flyover earned as a Navy pilot. And as I stood there, along with his family and his friends, and I looked up at the sky, as those planes precisely flying over our heads at that precise moment that only happens at funerals at Arlington National Cemetery. It was a beautiful, clear day in November 7th of 2011. And I watched those pilots, the one that dips away from formation, and I felt tears. Tears coming from my heart because I remembered what Noel Geiler had done. When he was serving during World War II in the Pacific Fleet as a pilot, he took his plane 6 days after we had bombed Hiroshima, and he flew over the devastation. And when he bore witness to what he saw, his conscience changed forever. As he recognized, he said that humanity had no business with that kind of horrific power. And later, when he served as the Admiral of the Pacific Command, and he was asked a routine budget question by the Joint Chiefs, how much did he want in his budget for nuclear weapons? And the response was, nothing. Thinking it a joke, they said again, right, Noel, how much? And he said, nothing, with dead seriousness. His career was on the line. But somebody took pity and plugged in a number, and they moved on. When Noel Geiler retired, he dedicated the rest of his life to pursuing nuclear disarmament, while also serving as head of director of the National Security Administration. As a Unitarian Universalist minister, I never thought I would be standing there at Arlington National Cemetery, one of several times I was invited to guide the interment of a Unitarian Universalist service member. And for the first time, I felt my cynical young heart feel patriotic. I didn't know it was something I was capable of. But what of their faith as Unitarian Universalists? I am committed to peace, and I have spoken out against the military-industrial complex and being used as a political tool in foreign interference. But all that time, my military members have supported me. They too yearn for peace. They too do not want the military used for immoral political tactics. After all, Mount Vernon knew when they called me that I had been standing out there for peace on their behalf. And because of that, I think it's important that we not romanticize the military or its members. They plead with us to not romanticize it. They live a life of moral and spiritual courage in order to create a world where perhaps one day we don't need soldiers to protect us. Until then, their Unitarian Universalist faith is lived with fortitude and courage. Courage being the theme of the month, I offer these beautiful words from George Tiger again. He said, "This courage to endure is more difficult to find than the courage required for one-time act of heroism. This everyday courage to drive on day in, day out requires more than overcoming fear. It requires us to overcome ourselves." George Tiger, that's in his book, War Zone Faith, and Armley Chaplin's Reflections from Afghanistan. Everyday courage is what makes our personal and our collective faith one worth sharing, my beloved, so that all of our veterans can find a religious home where they can be opened welcomingly without judgment, in the full embrace of their choices in life. They need moral support and compassion in this bruised world just as much as we do. So my charge to you, my beloved, find a way to offer gratitude and compassion, not only to our veterans, but to our active duty personnel. Be a source of healing and strength for them, for they do so need it. Show them that who we are as Unitarian Universalists, they are people of moral integrity and courage as we all strive for peace. May it be so. Blessed be. I invite you to stand as you're able. The words "for this land is your land" is in our order of service. One, two, three.
This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
I've roamed and rambled.
I've roamed and rambled, and I've followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts, and all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me.
As I went walking,
As I went walking, I saw a sign there,
and on that sign it said no trespassing, but on the other side
it didn't say nothing. This land was made for you and
this
me.
land,
This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
I invite you to remain standing as you're able as we bring our words together, as we extinguish our chalice. The words are found in our hearts as well as in the program. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth. The the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go forth, my beloved, go forth into this world with your hearts open, your minds eager to learn new things. Seek out, spread the love, return again with peace in our hearts. Blessed be.
It was just after sunrise and down by the sea, down on the sand flats where nothing will grow, come drumming and footsteps like out of a dream, where the golden green waters come in. Just 9 lucky soldiers had come through the night, half of them wounded and barely alive. Just 9 out of 20 was headed for home, with 11 sad stories to tell. I remember quite clearly when I got out of bed, I said, "Oh, good morning, what a